Today on the Fancy Comma YouTube, I'm here with Julia Gifford. Julia Gifford is the founder of True6, an award-winning content marketing and PR agency with a focus on visibility for high-tech organizations. She was part of the founding team of Printful, Latvia's first startup unicorn. She's an editor and contributor at Labs of Latvia and Tech.eu, one of Europe's leading startup news platforms. Born in Canada and now living in Europe, Julia is a European tech advocate who aims to get the word out about excellent and impactful initiatives. Her focus has turned to the often more difficult topics that have a higher barrier to entry to understand them: 5G, quantum, semiconductors, and more. With more than 10 years under her belt, she's happy to share her experience and insight in communicating big topics to an audience at large. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. It's great to connect with others that are at the interface of science and technology and marketing. Tell us about yourself and what you do at True6.
So True6 is my agency. I'm the co-founder and CEO, and we work with high-tech companies, not only companies, also governmental organizations, and we just try to drive visibility for them. A lot of our clients are from Latvia, which is a small country in Europe, south from Finland. And we don't have a big, London or New York where we've got mentors and media outlets and journalists and editors and investors. We have to work doubly hard to get noticed. And so there's a lot of work that goes into driving that visibility.
You work in these complex fields. I used to write about Bluetooth technology, like the same Bluetooth that's in our headphones, so I know a little bit about how it works. That stuff is very difficult. Like, it's difficult to sell something or to market something if you don't truly understand a product. So my next question for you is, how did you get into comms for these fields as such complex fields? Do you have a science background? Are you a physicist? What's your story?
I'm personally born and raised in Canada to a Latvian mother and British father. And then growing up, we went to Latvian schools on Saturdays and Latvian folk dancing and whatnot. And so after high school, when you don't really know what to study, so I figured, hey, I'll take this opportunity and I'll go study in Latvia and I'll learn something more about my roots. And then as a student, in order to support myself, I started working part-time for a startup kind of conglomerate. They're called the Draugiem Group. And essentially it's these two entrepreneurs, these two co-founders who they founded the Facebook of Latvia. Actually, Facebook was founded the same year that their social network, Draugiem, was founded. And it just exploded in popularity and everyone was using it, and they made a lot of money out of it. But what they did is they kept reinvesting their profit into building more startups, and eventually they started looking into internationally available startups, not just local ones for the local Latvian population. And so that's when I was hired, and then we started working on these things. And these startups, they were within a very broad breadth of topics. They ranged from your typical software as a service productivity tools and e-commerce, all the way up to vending machine automation, smart homes, etc. So already at that point, I myself was being taught to be very flexible in topic and versatile as a marketer. And as well as just it feeds this inherent huge curiosity that I have and just constantly to be learning. Branched out, created our own agency, and continued working. And we found that in that our particular niche, and one that's very difficult to compete in, well, for other people to compete with us, is in the highly technical and scientific deep tech fields. And there aren't many people who are willing to dig into these topics, to get their hands dirty, admit to not knowing everything, because that's one thing that you're going to come up against when you're marketing these things, because we are not I don't have that scientific background. You asked about that. I studied international relations, so nothing regarding writing or science or the topics that I'm writing about or entrepreneurship. But what it did teach me was just to read a lot, to process a lot of information, and put it down on paper and organize my thoughts. And those skills were priceless. And very often when we're talking about science heavy innovation, we're talking about potential lucrative deals here. This isn't your $12 a month subscription service. It started off with our client LMT, which is the country's biggest mobile operator. They were sponsoring an event, a conference that was happening locally called 5G Techratory. And they decided they want to do like a little video interview series, interviewing these big heads of telecoms innovations. But they need it to be in English, and no one is comfortable enough with English, so they hired me. I'm going, yeah, sure, I can do some innovation or interviewing. They said, great, it's going to be about 5G. And I'm going, great, what's 5G? So 2 days before the event, I'm given a 2-pager about what 5G is. 2 days later, I'm interviewing heads from Nokia, Deutsche Telekom, Cisco, AT&T, people who obviously know what they're talking about. That worked out very well. So we started working full-time on a retainer basis with LMT to support them in all of their telecoms innovations. Most mobile operators don't have export capacities. They're just selling their telecoms wares locally. LMT is different in the fact that they are developing a lot of innovations that they're selling internationally. They've done crazy things like accidentally setting a record for highest altitude Wi-Fi that they sent up into space with a rocket. It's insane. It's fun stuff to be working on, and it's always something new is happening.
I mean, like, I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm like, you're like, oh, I have no science and technology background. I got into marketing. I immediately landed a contract with the Latvia's largest telecom. So here that'll be like AT&T, for example. I think that would be unreal. Like if I said I was, I mean, international relations is pretty complex. And I think actually it probably dovetails quite well into telecom because it's about communication, connecting different regions. It's interesting to me that they don't have the telecom marketing documents in the local language in Latvia, which I don't know. Latvian? What do you all speak there?
In Latvia, Latvian is the national language.
My only real question for you, I know I interrupted your story. We'll have to hear the rest of your story, but how did you learn about telecommunications with no telecommunications background?
Read as much as I possibly could to understand. And with every conversation, I was probably interviewed 10 people per day at this conference over the course of 2 days. And with every conversation, I became a little more wise to the topic.
I mean, I'm a neuroscientist and I was tasked with learning about Bluetooth. And, it truly killed my brain to learn about Bluetooth, like the nitty gritty of Bluetooth technology. Like, how does Bluetooth communicate with your phone, with medical devices? Like that stuff, that was one of the steepest. But it's fun. It's really fun to learn about that. But I don't think it's beyond anyone's capacity. It's just you need to actually care about it and have the enthusiasm and be willing to learn, which is like really important in marketing anyway. So what happened with the rest of your story? I don't remember where you were at.
Oh, so we're working with LMT, we're working with 5G Techratory, so we're working with all of these big telecoms people. And then we start working with the government because the government's saying, hey, we have a lot of techie, deep tech, high value added topics that we want the world to know about. The country has defined these like 6 big topics that they have identified as like potential economy growing industries that they want to drive attention to, about how Latvia is strong in these areas. And those areas are ICT, smart energy, smart mobility, photonics, smart mobility, materials, and so on. And so then we start working on with them, and they're going, okay, well, we have this quantum computing scientist, and he's like a star in his field. And so we need an article, and we need to get it into international media. We'll put you in touch with him, and then and go. Okay, great. So we're put in touch with this quantum guy, and he is very knowledgeable in his field, and he could not be bothered with communications. He was excited about what he's doing in his work, but he was not interested in working with us and crafting a story in an article and whatnot.
Let me stop you for a second there, because I feel like this is basically like just the epitome is just of life as a scientist or working in a technical field. So the quantum computing person works in the Latvian with Latvian Telecom, and he was tasked to you're working with him, but he had no desire to engage in storytelling because obviously, I mean, I don't even know if you're a quantum computing person like marketing. I would find advertisements annoying as if I was in quantum physics, like uh, so I mean, that's a huge problem for science. Like my whole thing with Fancy Comma is helping scientists understand communication of science in graduate school and undergraduate time so that you don't have the same problem of like, oh, we're in a pandemic. No one knows any science. Oh, I guess we'll just make the scientists explain it, like in addition to their science work. Or let's have these people that were scientists. Now they have a science background. They have like, everyone should be able to talk about science. And maybe I'm idealistic because I'm an MIT graduate and science is my whole life. Like, there's nothing I like more in the world than just digging into the nitty gritty details of something science and technology related. But not everyone thinks that way. And especially when you get to the higher echelons of science and technology, then people just they don't care about it. Like, up here, they view marketing as just another way to just look to I can't wrap my mind
We
around the words I want to say right now.
marketing, oh, that's just makeup. And
Yeah, I
you have
mean
to
like
do the feeling that of the degree of importance of how they could perceive our work.
but it's hard to explain to someone that is literally like a quantum physicist or quantum computing person like, you need marketing if you want to be able to work at this company because if
If
you
you
don't
want
have
to
marketing, you're not going to have a company. So, because physicists are a tough crowd.
the one thing that we can do is we sit down and we talk to the scientist or the entrepreneur or whatever the person is, and we try to extract as much information as we can possibly in this discovery call. And then what we do is we do our own research in addition to that, and then try and figure out where that story fits into the global conversation and how we can translate the meaningfulness of what our scientist is doing to like mass communities. And like we're not talking about like your everyday newspaper. We're talking more about like the innovations and like the tech news outlets, but still that's not nearly as deep as the level that the scientist is talking at. And we're crafting this story in the scientist's name, so this is a ghost written piece, so it has to be written as if it's written by a quantum physicist. And we just could not get him to take the time to go over our article, and it just got stuck in limbo for a while. So that's one of the complications of communications in this area. At the same time, it's incredibly rewarding when you do see that article up.
I interviewed a subject matter expert, and I swear this happened. I asked her a question because she was the expert, and she acted like I was supposed to know what the answer was, and I was like, well, you're this. I mean, I'm sure she just thought that I was also. I mean, it's cool that she thought I was an expert, but it's the truth is like the reason you interview subject matter experts is because you don't have that expertise and they do. I asked her a question. She was like, couldn't you just Google that? And the answer is I could have just Googled that, but I was asking her because she's a subject matter expert. And I think a lot of times working with subject matter experts, it does require like a very specific skill set, like understand that this person is not in marketing. Like they don't like to sit around and strategize all day. They just do subject matter expert work all day. Like marketing, I think it kind of attracts these like ideas oriented people that love to chit chat all day like we're doing right now. But those are some of the what I was trying to say is those conversations that feel like you're pulling teeth are some of the hardest conversations out there, but they're also the most important because how would anyone know about telecom if it wasn't for your interview with this person? Like there, we do have some responsibility as marketers because our work interfaces with the public to educate people, help them make good decisions. I don't know if there's an ethical guide for marketing, but I think that we should have one because I see examples of bad marketing all the time. Marketing that tries to deceive you, marketing that doesn't truly explain stuff to you. And I think that I really admire the work you do at True6 because it's really important to have help people understand telecom because we all use telecom every day in our lives. So I don't know if I interrupted you again. I don't know if you remember where you were at in your story, but
So we're talking to the quantum guy, and then even so he was telling us some things, but He's such an expert that we can't even Google. Like, there's no information that available online to corroborate what he's saying. His research is so fresh, the industry is so fresh that we can't verify what he's saying as a fact or not. So, and he was also not responding to our questions. So we ended up contacting one of his colleagues at like Cambridge University to get their perspective on things, and it just became this entire process. And then sometimes you just take a step back and go, well, what an interesting life we lead. But yeah, but that's not all. And so one of the initiatives that we've been working on, there are a variety of different governmental organizations and private organizations in Latvia, also reflecting European Union initiatives right now, is to combat the semiconductor shortage, the global semiconductor shortage, and understanding that it's also a matter of economic security to have these components that aren't all necessarily manufactured in countries where you might not have agreements on data protection processes and norms and whatnot. And that the problem is, however, that there's, for example, there's very few percentually, if we're looking at the globe and how many semiconductors are and chips are manufactured, very few are manufactured outside of, I guess, the Asia region. And there's a big push right now in the European Union as well as in Latvia about how we can get some more manufacturing here. And so that was an entire additional process and project that has been very interesting to get to know. And we've been talking to different people within the semiconductor chain, and it turns out it's very naive to say, yes, we will manufacture semiconductors in our country, because there's actually there are many steps in the whole semiconductor manufacturing chain. It's very naive to think that you're going to be able to do all of them, because it even starts with just extraction of the minerals that you require.
There's many different types of semiconductors.
Yes.
Fancy Kama also recently worked on, the US just passed the Chips and Science Act, and we were lucky enough to work with a small business that is a semiconductor company, and they were contacting their congressman about this. So we helped them write a white paper about it. And I learned a lot about semiconductor manufacturing. Like, we take
Yeah,
a lot for granted, and but I'm sure semiconductors are huge in telecom because everything's computerized in telecom. Can't have
exactly.
telecom without semiconductors. So you work in the high tech field, so you kind of have your finger on the pulse of all of these different issues, telecom, and they're all interconnected. Telecom, connectivity technologies, 5G, quantum
Yeah,
computing, semiconductors.
yeah. Internet of
Do,
Things type things, but also we also have our lovely startup clients that are, the software as a service and that sort of thing. A fun new direction that we've started working in is in um, 3D manufacturing of airline components, aircraft components, which
That's
is,
very complex. I guess you just have a proclivity for these high tech. It's interesting to me that did you ever take any science courses in college or high school, or are you a science nerd growing up? Like, what drew you
no.
to this?
That's a great question. I have no idea because it's never really been on my radar at all. I went into social sciences in university, and we'd had no science courses at all. Um, and I've always been terrible in math, but that might be the whole societal.
I think that is a societal thing. I recently blogged about it. I'm an MIT graduate, as I said, and I took a year of math there. I took bunch of engineering math. I am I think I build it up in my mind that I'm not good at math. Like, if you sat me down and you're like, just do this. But the emotional gap baggage of being female, being a woman, and doing math is so difficult. That's the hardest part about it. Like, I think if you put me in a room with girls and we all liked math, we would all bond over the fact that we like math. But if you put me in a room with like a bunch of guys, and guys like to brag about like how much math they do, um, it would be a lot different. I don't know. Like, it's just it really is like this huge thing because it's like, if I'm bad at math, then it'll show that women are bad at math, but it's just like I was taking an exam to qualify for algebra tutoring. Algebra, I think I took it in eighth grade. Like I can do algebra really well, but for whatever reason, I couldn't concentrate. And it was so loud at the coffee shop I was sitting at, and I couldn't think. And I was just like, I'm an MIT graduate and I can't do algebra. Like, who am I?
But it's so loaded though, like that I have to be good at math in order to refute these just stereotypes about my entire gender. And like, oh my God, that's a lot to put on one person's shoulders. Of course that gets in the way.
And I think part of the baggage associated with not only math, but like also thinking about high tech things, like they're complex, but that doesn't mean you can't like work on them. I mean, like I'm of the belief that if you're a scientist, like you shouldn't shy away from marketing because you don't have a marketing background, because you have a lot to contribute. Like you can understand concepts like ROI, return on investment, whatever, very easily. Um, I could totally see scientists like just totally killing it in marketing, but just because you don't have a certain background doesn't mean you can't excel in something. There's a fellowship called it's a science and technology policy fellowship. It's for newly minted PhDs that um, want to work in science policy. They get to work in Congress, or they get put in like a U.S. government agency, and they get to help inform policy. And now with this AI thing happening, they created another one, and they reduced the requirements. They reduced it to having a master's and 3 years of work experience, which I have a master's and I have about 10 years of work experience communicating science. So I can finally apply to these. But it's just like the barrier that they created, and sort of like this idea that if you aren't like a PhD, you can't do anything related to science. Like it kind of, I mean, yeah, like if you don't know anything about something, like I don't know how you're going to write about it. But at the same time, if you're intensely curious about something, willing to do the work to learn about it, like there should be no reason that you're kept out of doing that. And I feel like the only way we're going to break down these barriers now is by having like science and technology emergencies where like we need everyone, all hands on deck. So um, it's really weird to me, like the barriers we have in society. What kind of government does Latvia have?
It's a parliamentary democratic republic. So the head of state is the prime minister, which is an elected representative, and then the parliament elects a president, and then the president is largely a symbolic figure. But they have some available tools at their disposal, like being able to throw back a policy back to parliament if they don't like it. Rarely used.
So I guess like I was going to ask, do you advise the government on science and technology or the EU? Latvia is in the EU, right?
Latvia's in the EU, yeah.
Is it in NATO?
Yes.
It's in NATO as well. And I'm sorry, I don't know these because it would have made sense for me to read about Latvia before doing this interview. But
Don't worry about it.
do you advise on national security? Like, because telecom is huge in national security. Like, well, I guess as a NATO member, the US and Latvia work together on this.
Yeah.
That's cool. You could easily move into the defense space because chips are used in like all sorts of defense
Actually,
items.
we do a lot in the defense innovation sector together with LMT. And there's
That
also
is
a
great.
company that's developing augmented reality glasses that are being sent to Ukraine for testing, and etc. So we're definitely doing a lot in that space. But to answer your question, no, I'm not advising the government currently in a consultative role or capacity. But maybe one day I would love that. That'd be so great.
That would be a really fun job. I think that's one of my dream jobs. I have too many dream jobs. Like, I don't know, do I really have a dream job, or do I just have a bunch of jobs that I really want to do for like a week and then see if they're cool? I'm not sure. But
I, I say the same thing. I just have too many interests. What's a person to do?
The good thing about marketing is that you can follow all of your interests and expand on your interests too. Like I've learned about things I didn't think I would like and now I love. And telecom is really interesting to me. And the applications of high tech, the high tech industry is my jam. Like I have worked with some high tech clients, many high tech clients actually, that do a lot of health biomedical writing, we try not to limit ourselves at Fancy Comma because the main and the one thing that I really like about this work is that you are always learning something and really important stuff that keeps your mind sharp, keeps you feeling like you're making a difference. I think this is relevant to most of our followers. We had 26 followers. Yesterday we got a follower, so now I have 27 followers. What advice do you have for them about what you have learned about science and technology communication through your work?
My advice would be, if you are a practitioner, a scientist, a subject matter expert that's trying to find ways or to communicate or is struggling to communicate your idea, my recommendation would be to systematize the time that you spend dedicated to this communication. Because we know you've got your lab time, you've got your studies, research time and whatnot. And very often we come across the topic of, but well, when do you expect me to write that LinkedIn post and that whatnot? And like, there's no time. When am I supposed to do it? Well, it's, if you consider it part of your job and you schedule it just as you would any other aspect of your work, like, on Fridays you write the reports, then maybe on Thursday evenings you write the LinkedIn post, and that just becomes your system. And that Thursday evening comes around and go, okay, well, I got to work on some of my communications efforts at the moment, and just accepting that it is part of your routine, and then just spending some time putting together some sort of content, whatever that might be, or putting together like one pager describing what you're working on and sending it to the marketing representative of your organization. For example, very often universities have marketing and PR divisions who are very eager to communicate their scientists and their researchers' findings, and that sort of stuff is very well received in news. So if you're able to deliver just like bullet point main ideas about what you're working on, why it's important, and how it fits into whatever is going on in the world right now, then that would be so helpful. And you'd get more eyes on what you're doing. So that would probably be my main suggestion.
What advice do you have for scientists seeking to communicate science better, like especially those in the technical fields, if any? Or do you think scientists should be doing that? Do you think they should be working with people like you and me,
Yeah.
communicators, marketers? What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
The guiding question is, why does this matter? Why is this important? Why should someone care? And you, of course, you know the answer to that question. But explaining to another person why they should care, why this is important, why this is relevant to the world, not just to your little community, but what are those further implications of that one finding? Like, okay, that one finding, it might seem very abstract to the general public, but if you can zoom out and say, but if we know that, then that means that, and then you can explain the relevance in the bigger picture context, that will help you figure out what that general thesis is that you're going to lead with when you're explaining your idea to wider audiences.
What is your favorite project that you've worked on that you can talk about? Now I'm convinced you're doing all this super secret work, but it would be cool if we could do super secret work as marketers. But the whole point of marketing is to truly just explain stuff to everyone. So another one of my many dream jobs that I've mentioned, I have to do like a blog just on like listing all my dream jobs and be like, number one is like speech writing for a Senate candidate. Number two is like being in a bunker doing bullet points or something to like win a war for great justice.
You should tell that, hire me for the following.
I have way too many interests now that I have so many different skills. I keep thinking about different ways I can use them. Not all of those applications are real life applications. Um, but anyway, What is your favorite project that you've worked on?
I think probably one of the more impactful projects that we worked on was it was an entirely pro bono project that we were pulled into through our clients LMT, and who were as the pandemic broke out, everyone was scrambling to find technical solutions to whatnot. And we know governments are slow and it takes a while for them to figure things out and allocate money and that sort of thing. So the people who were able to move most quickly were the grassroots people who are organizing at a grassroots level. And there was a group of enthusiasts and of companies in Latvia who had come together to put together a contact tracing app. And it was actually the first app to have been built on the Google Android API, which was their crisis contact tracing API. And so they were in touch with the Google and Apple team early on. And then we're also able to be the first to launch the contact tracing app, which was a big deal globally. And then we were heading up the communications for that, and we're able to secure coverage in BBC and whatnot, and all of the major news outlets that you can imagine. And so it was very impactful and very inspiring to see the entire tech community come together, build, hack together solutions, and then do something of global importance that hopefully would be saving people's lives. Fun little story about the pandemic and how it went, and just a reminder that it's still here. Last weekend, I was at a wedding where there was no bride because she had come down with COVID.
Wow. So how did she get married? Did someone bring a laptop of her and then how groom kissed the laptop? Wed from home. WFH still. It's still W from FH, but the W is for wed.
Work or wed
That
for
is awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our now 27 viewers about True6 or anything you're doing or promote anything that you're working on or give a shout out to your mom or anything?
Always shout out to my mom. Hi, mom and dad. One thing I can certainly say is any listeners, please do add me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect and stay in touch with everyone there. I'm just Julia Gifford. And in the invite, say that you came from the Fancy Comma podcast.
And we'll put a link in the description box too, so that people can follow you and learn more about all you're doing. It sounds like you're doing a lot of really important stuff and really great stuff to support the war effort in Ukraine and everything. So it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed talking to you and I've learned a lot, and I was unsure where this conversation would go because I know nothing about quantum physics, but actually I had a blast talking to you. So thank you so much for being on the Fancy Comma YouTube, and I look forward to continuing to follow you and bond with my fellow science and technology marketers out there.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me. And I can't wait to listen to more of your interviews. This is a great initiative.